When Brenda torched my cornfield, she stepped right into the trap I'd been building for weeks. The night reeked of burning corn, 3 acres gone, my daughter's college tuition going up in smoke. Brenda Hartwell stood at the fence line, gas can in hand, grinning like she just painted a masterpiece. Farming is so outdated, she giggled into her phone, live streaming for her Facebook friends. This neighborhood deserves better. Then the sirens began, closer, louder. Brenda's grin dissolved when she realized the fire trucks were coming for her, not some distant blaze. What she didn't know was that I'd been waiting for this exact move. What would you do if your HOA neighbor burned your kid's future for social media likes? Let me rewind. I'm Charlie Fieldstone, a third-generation corn farmer with 8 acres in rural Ohio. My grandfather bought this land in 1953 for $300 and a handshake, back when cornfields stretched to the horizon. Now, 70 years later, I'm surrounded by McMansions with names like Whispering Oaks. Ironic, since there isn't a single oak tree left. My family's farm is the last trace of history here, treated like dirt on designer shoes. My wife Denise teaches 3rd grade. We have twin daughters, Sarah and Emma, both 18 and college-bound, Sarah for veterinary medicine, Emma for engineering. Tuition runs $30,000 each. You know what pays for that? My harvest, every kernel. The sweet smell of corn tassels used to be my favorite scent. Now it reminds me of everything I nearly lost to one unhinged real estate agent. Enter Brenda Hartwell, 48, HOA president and part-time house flipper. 3 years ago, she moved into the biggest McMansion, all vinyl siding, fake shutters, and a garage bigger than my barn. Her backyard borders mine, divided by my grandfather's old oak fence. Last spring, she showed up with a clipboard and that dead-eyed realtor's smile. Hi, neighbor. We've had complaints about your farm equipment being visible from the street. I looked at my 1960 John Deere, exactly where it had always been. Lady, that tractor's been here longer than your whole subdivision. Her smile sharpened. Several residents say it's hurting property values. My clients are concerned about the rural aesthetic. Here's the kicker. My farm predates their HOA by 40 years. I'm not even under their jurisdiction. Try explaining that to someone whose biggest crisis is mismatched mailboxes. This is a working farm, I said. The equipment stays. Her voice turned cold. Mr. Fieldstone, being a good neighbor means considering how your choices affect others. I'd hate for this to become unpleasant. Right then, my rooster Hannibal crowed like it was scripted. She stormed off, gravel crunching under her heels. I should have seen it as a warning. 2 days later, I heard voices near the fence while checking irrigation lines. Brenda stood with some slick guy in a $1,000 suit, pointing at my field like she was already naming the streets. 8 acres, perfect for luxury townhomes, she said. This farming situation is temporary. The man nodded, taking notes. Timeline for vacant possession? 6 months, max. These old farmers always cave when you apply the right pressure. My blood turned to ice. This wasn't about property values. It was about commission checks and development deals. She was selling my land before it was even for sale. I ducked behind my grandfather's old tool shed, heart pounding like I was back in Afghanistan. The rough bark of our century-old oak felt solid under my hand. Everything else suddenly felt fragile. That night, I called Jake Thornfield, an agricultural lawyer and old Army buddy. Jake, hypothetically, what happens if someone tries to harass a farmer off his land for development? Nothing hypothetical about it, Marcus, he said. It happens all the time. Document everything. And Marcus, watch your 6. When I hung up, Denise came out with 2 beers. Everything okay? I stared across my fields, corn stalks rustling in the breeze, the same sound my grandfather once heard every summer. Honey, I said, I think we're about to find out how far people will go for money. The next morning, my irrigation hose lay slashed in 3 spots. Game on, Brenda. 3 cuts might not sound like much, but when you're watering 30,000 corn plants in the peak of July, it's financial sabotage. I spent the morning splicing rubber under a 100-degree sun, the taste of anger metallic on my tongue. Round 2 didn't take long. Tuesday afternoon, I was inspecting stalks when a white county truck pulled into my drive. Fire Marshal Dave Peterson climbed out looking like he hated what he was about to say. Marcus, sorry, but we've had a complaint, illegal agricultural burning on your property. Illegal burning? I wiped sweat off my brow. Dave, I haven't burned anything since spring cleanup, and that was with permits. He shrugged, unconvinced himself. Someone filed a formal report, says you've been conducting unauthorized burns during a drought. They even gave photos. My stomach dropped. Photos of what? Dave handed me a manila folder, heavy as a brick. Inside were pictures of smoke rising from what appeared to be my back 40, but the background was Tom Henderson's controlled burn 3 miles away. The angle made it look like my land. This is bogus, Dave. That's not even my property. I know, he said quietly, but rules are rules. I've got to check it out. He carried the tired tone of a man who's seen too many neighbor wars. 20 minutes later, after inspecting my place, he confirmed what we both already knew. My fire safety protocols were flawless. Permits current, fire breaks cut, water sources marked. He even admired my grandfather's old stone fire ring. Army taught me this. When someone starts building a paper trail against you, they're gearing up for something bigger. I remembered reading that real estate agents can lose their licenses for false zoning claims. Brenda was wobbling on a thin wire and didn't even realize it. Dave climbed back into his truck. Whoever did this either knows nothing about farming or they're setting you up. Watch your six, Marcus. That evening, I mounted my first security camera. Nothing fancy, just a trail cam on the equipment shed. The soft click of the bracket felt like setting perimeter security overseas. Different battlefield, same tactics. By Wednesday morning came the diesel message. I smelled it before I saw the puddle near my fuel tank. Someone had poured about a gallon into the soil. Not enough to cause damage, just enough to show they could get close whenever they wanted. I began digging into Brenda's business practices. The county assessor's site confirmed my hunch. She'd been promising buyers that agricultural zoning changes were coming, except no such changes were even on the table. In Ohio, that kind of misrepresentation can end a real estate career. Thursday, while replacing fence boards, Harold Grayson shuffled over, eyes darting like a man with a confession. Harold, 75, retired postal worker, here since before the McMansions. Marcus, we need to talk, he said, voice low under the rustle of corn. What's up, Harold? That Hartwell woman came by yesterday asking about your schedule, when you're off the property. His hands tightened on the fence rail until his knuckles went white. When I wouldn't tell her, she offered me $500 cash for info about your safety violations. Safety violations I don't have, I muttered. She hinted I might start noticing some, Harold said, disgust thick in his voice. My late wife used to love watching your grandfather work this land. Brenda is trying to wreck something beautiful for commission checks. That's when Harold became my inside man. Turns out Brenda had been making the same offer up and down the block. Most neighbors told her off. A few smelled easy money. By Friday, I had a war chest, photos of diesel sabotage, documentation of the fake fire complaint, screenshots of her fraudulent listings, witness statements about her bribes. But my real counterpunch was those live listings on her website, full of promises she couldn't keep. I called the Ohio Division of Real Estate with every screenshot in hand. Ma'am, I'd like to file a complaint about fraudulent claims regarding agricultural zoning. The investigators' interest sharpened immediately. Brenda wasn't the first they'd seen running this scam. That weekend, I installed more cameras and studied agricultural protection laws. Harold showed up Sunday with coffee and fresh intel. She's holding some kind of war council tonight, he whispered. 4 cars rolled in around 7. From my kitchen window, I watched silhouettes move behind Brenda's curtains. Let the games begin, Brenda. Your move. Monday morning brought it. She'd formed the Neighborhood Safety Committee, basically a gang of bored suburbanites with clipboards and grudges. First up, Janet Kowalski in a spotless white Lexus, photographing my barn like it was a crime scene. Morning, Janet, I called, coffee in hand. The bitter taste matched my mood. Something I can help you with? She jumped like she'd been caught stealing eggs. Oh, Marcus, just documenting safety concerns. Such as? She fumbled with her phone, clearly reading a script. The proximity of your fuel storage to residential property, vermin from your compost. I almost laughed. My tank sat farther from her house than her own grill. My compost met every code on the books. Janet, you've been here, 6 months? My family's been following safety codes since before your subdivision existed. The blush creeping up her neck told me everything. Brenda had fed her lines, and Janet was just another desperate actress. All week they took shifts harassing me. Tuesday, it was Martin Cruz documenting dust issues while the corn swayed silently. Wednesday, Susan Walsh complained about my rooster, the same bird crowing here 3 years before she moved in. By Friday, they demanded I build expensive privacy fencing to hide my unsightly operations. Saturday, while I fixed actual fence damage, Harold appeared again, this time with intel that froze my stomach. "Marcus, I did some digging on your committee friends," he said, handing me a folded newspaper clipping. His hands trembled. Martin Cruz? Facing an insurance fraud lawsuit. Susan Walsh? Lost her real estate license for forging inspection documents. Brenda's recruiting criminals, I muttered. "It gets worse," Harold whispered. "I overheard her offering $50 for every violation they can report. She's buying false testimony. Now I saw the play. Organized fraud to build a legal case to push me off my land. My daughter's college money, my grandfather's legacy, everything, under siege by paid liars. That afternoon I dove into public records like my life depended on it. It did. Martin had 3 suspicious insurance claims in 2 years. Susan had a pattern of falsified documents. Even Janet's husband had bankruptcies and DUIs. Brenda had built herself a fraud army. But she'd miscalculated one thing, Harold. To him, my farm wasn't just crops. It was the last bit of authenticity left in a world of vinyl siding and fake shutters. His late wife used to sit on their porch and watch my grandfather work these fields. So when he offered to spy on Brenda's meetings, I didn't hesitate. "Wednesday night, 7 o'clock, he whispered. "She's bringing in professionals." That evening I watched cars gather at Brenda's like vultures. Harold's beat-up Honda was invisible among the luxury SUVs. Perfect cover. An hour later, he knocked on my back door, face pale. "She hired a private investigator," he said. "Guy named Rick Polson. They're planning to plant dead fish in your creek, fake chemical spills, record noise violations during legal working hours." The room tilted. "Brenda's under pressure," Harold said, gripping his beer bottle. "She promised her developers a timeline she can't deliver. They're talking about staging something big enough to trigger county intervention." That night, I went full military. Infrared cameras, motion sensors, even decoy units to throw them off. The soft hum of surveillance equipment became my new lullaby. I also called Jake Thornfield. "Jake, what's the penalty for conspiring to file false government reports?" "Organized fraud, Marcus. Federal crime if it crosses certain thresholds." The next morning, fresh tire tracks scar my cornfield. Someone had driven through during the night. 20 plants destroyed. Brenda's war was escalating. Time to fight back. Her next attack hit me at the worst possible time, peak irrigation season. My corn needed every drop to survive August heat. At dawn, while checking sprinklers, Harold's panicked voice cut through the morning air. "Marcus." County truck just pulled into Brenda's driveway. The crunch of dried husks under my boots sounded like breaking bones as I jogged toward the fence. My gut told me this wasn't a social call. 20 minutes later, Water Inspector Carol Rise knocked on my door with paperwork that felt like a death warrant. "Sorry, Marcus," she said. "We got complaints about excessive water usage. You need to shut your irrigation down, pending investigation." The words hit like a punch. I stare at the cease and desist order, watching my daughter's college dreams evaporate. "Carol, my well's been here since 1953. It's never affected anyone's water." "I know," she said quietly, "but look at these usage numbers." She handed me charts showing I was pumping 3 times normal agricultural levels, enough for a golf course. Pure fiction. My grandfather's old well couldn't produce half that if it ran nonstop. Someone had forged official-looking documents to frame me. Who filed the complaint? "Anonymous tip," she said, glancing around nervously. "But, Marcus, this feels orchestrated. Get your own usage test done fast." As her truck rolled down my drive, the metallic taste of real fear hit me. Without irrigation, 30,000 plants would die in a week, $60,000 gone. Then I noticed something worse. A 20-foot strip of corn along my eastern line had turned brown overnight, not drought yellow, but chemical burn brown. The air reeked of herbicide like poison gas. My trail chem covered that exact section. Back at the house, my hands shook as I fast-forwarded through hours of darkness. 2:47 a.m., there she was. Brenda Hartwell creeping along my fence line with a spray bottle, methodically poisoning my crops. The infrared camera caught everything: her face, the herbicide container, even her Mercedes license plate as she loaded the empty bottle. She documented her own felony. 3 hours later, I was at Tractor Supply with my buddy Tom. Their parking lot camera had her buying 2 gallons of Roundup the night before. Cash transaction, but her face clear under the sodium lights. I had her cold: agricultural vandalism, criminal trespass, crop destruction. In Ohio, destroying another person's crops is a felony with up to 5 years in prison. But my gut said this was only her opening salvo. That evening, Harold came with intel that explained her desperation. "She's in deep trouble," he whispered. I overheard her screaming about development timelines. Her broker contract has penalty clauses. What kind? $50,000 forfeited if the land isn't available by October 1st. Plus, she loses the commission. Harold's face looked haunted. "Marcus, she's borrowed against that money. If this deal collapses, she's bankrupt." The pieces clicked like rifle rounds chambering. Brenda wasn't just harassing me. She was fighting for her financial life. Public records showed her development deal promised $168,000 in commission for delivering my 8 acres vacant and ready. She'd already spent the money she didn't have, betting on stealing my land through fraud and intimidation. That night, I hired an independent hydrologist. Cost me $400 I didn't have, but the results were devastating for Brenda. My usage was 40% below agricultural averages. The county numbers were complete fiction. I also upgraded my security: heat-sensitive cameras, more motion detectors. If she escalated to arson or sabotage, I'd capture every act in admissible detail. The real revelation came while researching agricultural protection laws. In the 1980s, developers used similar harassment tactics until Congress passed the Agricultural Land Protection Act, written to stop exactly what Brenda was doing. As I sat in my kitchen that night, watching sprinklers water perfect suburban lawns while my corn struggled, I realized something: Brenda had made a fatal error. She declared war on someone who understood both agriculture and military strategy. Tuesday evening, Harold appeared at my fence line looking like he'd seen a ghost. His knuckles were white on the rail. "Marcus, we need to talk now." I dropped my wrench, the metallic clang echoing off the barn wall. Harold had never looked this shaken, not even when his wife passed. "What happened?" I stayed after the committee meeting. Hid in Brenda's garage after everyone left. Harold's breathing was shallow. "What did you hear?" "She's not trying to push you out over property values," he said. My stomach dropped. "Then what?" "She's already got a development deal. $2.8 million for your 8 acres, 32 luxury townhomes at $400,000 each." The words hit like blows. My grandfather's land, 3 generations reduced to a suburban cash grab for people who think corn comes from cans. That's impossible. It's agricultural land. "Not anymore," Harold said. He pulled out his flip phone, hands trembling. I recorded part of their conversation. "You need to hear this." The audio was scratchy, but Brenda's voice cut through like a blade. "Jim, I guarantee vacant possession by October 1st. The agricultural situation is temporary. Farmers always cave under enough pressure. I've orchestrated this before." A gravelly male voice responded, "Brenda, if this timeline slips, we're talking $50,000 in penalties plus your commission. Can you deliver?" "Trust me," Brenda whispered. "I got county officials building harassment cases, neighbors documenting fake violations, and if necessary," her voice dropped to a hiss, "well, farm accidents happen all the time." The recording ended, but the threat hung in the air like smoke. Harold's face had gone pale as winter wheat. "She's talking about hurting you, Marcus." That old combat alertness surged through me, the hyper-awareness that keeps soldiers alive when death is circling. "Harold, you just handed me evidence of criminal conspiracy and implied violence. This isn't harassment anymore. It's organized crime." "It gets worse," Harold said, voice cracking. "She's borrowed against that commission. Second mortgage, new Mercedes, paid for her daughter's wedding. If this deal collapses, she's ruined." Now I understood the escalation, the desperation, the increasingly dangerous tactics. Brenda wasn't just greedy, she was cornered. And cornered animals are the most lethal. But 20 years of military strategy kicked in. When your enemy shows their true objective, you don't just defend, you destroy their foundation. That night, I dug into agricultural easements until my eyes burned. Discovered farmers can file conservation easements that legally protect land from development forever. It takes 30 days, but once approved, the property becomes untouchable, and the state even gives tax benefits to encourage it. Dawn found me at the county courthouse with a stack of forms and a $500 filing fee. By noon, my 8 acres were officially protected under Ohio's Agricultural Preservation Program forever. Even if Brenda somehow forced me to sell, no developer could touch it. Her $2.8 million deal had just become worthless paper. But I kept this card close. Sometimes the best weapon is the one your enemy doesn't know you have. Let her keep escalating, keep committing crimes, keep building evidence of her own conspiracy. Because when this war hit its climax and Harold's recording guaranteed it, I wanted her buried so deep she'd never threaten another farmer. The power dynamic had just shifted. The next morning, I called an emergency meeting in my kitchen with the only people I trusted. Coffee percolated as I spread Harold's evidence across my grandfather's oak table like battle plans. "All right, team," I said, looking at the faces around me. "Time to stop playing defense." Denise sat with her laptop open, tabs of legal research glowing on the screen. Over the past month, she transformed from worried wife into full-time investigator, better than most lawyers I'd met. "I've been digging into agricultural protection laws all night," she said. "Marcus, what you filed yesterday was brilliant, but we need to go bigger." Harold perched on the edge of his chair, still adjusting to being our inside man. "Brenda is planning something for this weekend." Committee meeting got moved up. She mentioned bringing in professional documentation services. Professional documentation? I raised an eyebrow. "That private investigator she hired, Rick Polson," Harold said. "He specializes in manufacturing evidence for civil cases." Deputy Sheriff Rodriguez, my old Army buddy, leaned back in his chair with that calculating look from Afghanistan. "Manufacturing evidence for civil cases is federal fraud. Marcus, if we can prove conspiracy, this becomes a RICO case." That's when I knew we had them. Most people think RICO only applies to mob bosses, but it covers any pattern of coordinated illegal activity for financial gain. Brenda's harassment campaign, her committee, her PI, was textbook racketeering. "Here's what we're going to do," I said, pulling out a legal pad. "Jake Thornfield's driving down from Columbus this afternoon. He's handled 3 agricultural fraud cases this year, and one involved RICO charges. That night, I hardened my defenses. Military-grade surveillance went up, infrared cameras, motion sensors, even decoy units to confuse anyone snooping. The low hum of recording gear became my lullaby. I also rang up Jake Thornfield. "What's the penalty for conspiring to file false government reports?" I asked. "That's organized fraud, Marcus," he said. "Federal crime if it crosses certain lines. By dawn, new tire tracks scar my fields. Someone had driven through, crushing 20 plants." Brenda was escalating. The next blow came at irrigation peak, when my crop needed every drop to survive August heat. While I was checking sprinklers, Harold came running. "Marcus, a county truck just pulled into Brenda's driveway." Minutes later, Water Inspector Carol Harris was at my door with a shutdown order. "Sorry, Marcus. Got complaints about excessive water use. Until we investigate, irrigation stops." The papers hit like a hammer. My well had been running since 1953 without issue. The usage data she showed me claimed I was pumping enough water to supply a golf course. Total fabrication. Carol lowered her voice. "Feels orchestrated. Get your own test run fast. Without irrigation, 30,000 plants would be gone in a week. That's 60 grand, my daughter's tuition money, up in smoke." But something worse hit me. Along the east fence line, a 20-foot strip of corn was dead overnight, not yellowed from drought, but burned brown, reeking of chemicals. Herbicide. My trail camera had the answer. At 2:47 a.m., Brenda appeared on infrared, sneaking along the fence with a spray bottle, dousing row after row. Her Mercedes license plate glowed clear when she left. Later that morning, Tom at Tractor Supply confirmed it. His security footage caught her buying 2 gallons of Roundup with cash. I had her trespass, vandalism, crop destruction. Felonies, all of it. Then Harold whispered the piece that explained her madness. "She's desperate, Marcus. Broker penalties. If she doesn't deliver your land by October 1st, she loses 50 grand and a commission. Public records showed it clear a $168,000 payday if she got my 8 acres cleared. She'd already spent money she didn't have. I hired a hydrologist. Cost me $400 I couldn't spare, but the results buried her claim. My water use was 40% below the agricultural average. County data? Pure fiction. Researching late that night, I found the Agricultural Land Protection Act, laws written in the 80s to stop exactly this kind of developer harassment. And then I discovered something stronger: conservation easements. With one filing, farmland could be locked against development forever. At dawn, I was at the courthouse. $500 later, my 8 acres were permanently protected. Even if Brenda forced a sale, no developer could touch it. And here's the best part. I continued, feeling the storm build. 3 weeks ago, I filed a conservation easement. My land is legally protected. Forever. No developer will ever touch it. The silence was suffocating, until Harold stood. His voice shook, but he didn't flinch. I've been Brenda's inside man. Everything Charlie said is true. She hired criminals, bribed neighbors, and tonight she tried to burn his crops. That's when Deputy Rodriguez entered with backup, still reeking of smoke. His voice cut like steel. Brenda Hartwell, you're under arrest for arson, fraud, harassment, conspiracy, and more charges were still stacking. The handcuffs clicked while the whole town stared. Chaos erupted. Council members demanding answers. Neighbors whispering how they'd missed this conspiracy on their doorstep. Reporters scribbling furiously. Then Jake Thornfield stepped forward with a folder thick as a dictionary. His smile was pure predator. For the record, Mrs. Hartwell, you're also facing federal RICO charges, civil damages north of $500,000, and permanent loss of your license. Your deal is void. Your commission gone. Your assets frozen. Brenda's knees buckled. She collapsed into her chair, pale and hollow. No payday. No future. Just charges and ruin. As Rodriguez let her out, she passed me. For a heartbeat, our eyes locked, and I saw fear, the realization she'd burned her life down for money she'd never see. You should have stuck to selling houses, I whispered. The chamber doors shut behind her, sobbing. Justice, with the whole town watching. 6 months later, I stood in my cornfield as Sarah and Emma helped with spring planting. The transformation was staggering, not just the land, but us. Brenda pled guilty. 2 years in prison, $50,000 restitution, her career over. Her thug, Pole's son, got 18 months and lost his license. Midwest Development forked over $75,000 to dodge federal trial, an admission of guilt in all but name. But the real win wasn't cash, it was telling my girl's college was paid for. Insurance and settlements covered Sarah's veterinary dreams and Emma's engineering degree. Justice pays compound interest, I told them. Emma now double majors in agricultural engineering. Somebody's got to help farmers fight back. Sarah tends calves in the barn, preparing for vet school. Denise, newly certified as a paralegal, joined Jake's firm, defending farm families statewide. Harold, once the reluctant insider, became a local hero, teaching fraud awareness at the county extension. Our case sparked a statewide law, the Fieldstone Agricultural Protection Act. Farmer harassment is now a felony, and other states are copying it. We used settlement money to start a scholarship fund for students in agricultural law and sustainability. Already, it's sending kids to college who will guard land like ours. The annual Heritage Harvest Festival exploded, 5,000 visitors, legislators announcing farm protection funds, local businesses booming. 17 families have now filed easements, protecting 300 acres permanently. Development interests are crumbling. Even Midwest filed bankruptcy after more of their schemes collapsed under our legal playbook. And me? I walk the rows at dusk, the soil rich with promise, my daughters laughing across the fields. This land will never be strip malls or subdivisions. It will remain what it has always been, good ground feeding good people. The bark of my grandfather's oak is rough under my palm, steady as the legacy it guards. Denise waves from the porch with another case file. Emma turns the John Deere along a clean furrow. Sarah bottle feeds a calf under the barn light. This is victory. Not just beating one corrupt broker, but proving that community, heritage, and stubborn honesty are stronger than greed. Some things are worth bleeding for. Worth risking everything for. Family land. Honest work. The right to live free of parasites who mistake greed for progress. The best revenge? Refusing to let them destroy what matters most.